Hello and welcome back to the SecurityMetrics podcast. My name is Jen Stone. I'm one of the principal security analysts here at SecurityMetrics, and we are coming to you this week from the PCI community meeting here in North America. It's in Portland, Oregon this year. Very excited to be able to talk to some of the speakers and other attendees here at the conference. But right now, I have with me Jeff Zitomer from Human. Will you please tell us a little bit about you, your path to what you do at Human, how you got there, and a little bit about your experience?
Of course. Yeah. So first off, great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I've been at Human since last January, working on our client-side defense product or solution for the client-side defense problem, including the new PCI DSS 4.0 requirements that relate to client-side and scripts within the customer's browser. My journey in the past, originally born and raised in Israel, served in the Israeli Navy as a graduate of the Israeli Navy Officers Academy, and then a deputy chief engineer on a submarine.
Wow, very cool.
When it came time to be, a civilian, studied electrical engineering, developed microchips for a few years in an established company, a couple startups, and then saw that I was a lot more interested in seeing more the business side of things, the strategy, why certain decisions were made. Moved to the U.S., got an MBA at Kellogg, which was a great experience.
Wow, yeah.
Then served the mandatory 2 years of service with a management consulting company. This was Bain & Company in Dallas. And after that, I was heading back into tech. So moved to Silicon Valley, worked as a product manager at Akamai for 3 years. Among other things, rolled out HTTP 2 at Akamai. And Akamai's ability to purge content and activate configuration changes very quickly, which was a bit of a problem at the time with the whole DevOps trend,
right,
and a few aggressive competitors. And that was a long, big project. I needed to do something different, and basically a friend of a friend was looking for somebody who can talk to business people but can also go deep on the tech for what they called the Geek Squad within SAP's corporate strategy group.
Okay.
So I ended up spending about 6 years at SAP Corporate Strategy, first on the Geek Squad, then more generally leading the North America team at SAP Corporate Strategy.
Okay.
And covering topics like security and GRC, a lot of it, and then other like cloud infrastructure, cloud applications, cloud platforms, APIs, payments across, if you imagine a large B2B company like SAP with all the IT that companies run, a lot of different systems have to talk to payment systems.
Sure.
So there was a lot to look at over there as far as what should the company's strategy be? How should it all be cohesive across such a big company?
Well, we clearly could talk about so many things today because you have a remarkable background in related topics. But I think the most critical one, and I'm really glad that you're here today to talk about it, is these the client-side protections, the new requirements regarding scripts on a page, basically that whole bucket of things, is a real concern to a lot of people, and especially people who don't really understand what is this new thing and why do I have to do more work and what is it? Why is this something that's suddenly happening now? And I think maybe giving a little background on what are the kinds of attacks that we're trying to prevent. Can you give a little background on that?
Of course, I'm happy to. Thanks for the opportunity. So basically, if you go back a little bit, around 2018 is when Magecart attacks became just popular news. Now there are all these
everybody has heard of Magecart now. Yeah.
So they were happening for probably at least a good 3 years before.
Yeah.
But then, 2018 is when everybody found out with large breaches like the British Airways breach, which is more remembered, I think, for getting the massive GDPR fine that resulted from that breach.
Yeah.
Of, I think it was like 183 million pounds sterling.
It was pretty massive.
At the time. And this was just before COVID. So then I think it got reduced because of COVID to like 20 million because nobody was flying.
Yay, COVID.
But yeah, so people remember that as far as, oh, wow, they're serious here in GDPR because it wasn't that long after GDPR went live. So yeah, GDPR is serious about taking a big chunk of your revenue if you mess up privacy.
Right.
So yeah, so I think it's a lot of people remember the GDPR takeaway. And then at the time also for that attack, then there was a lot of interest. Various startups were founded and companies like Perimeter X, which is now part of Human, at the time already existed, but said, hey, we could solve this as well. And customers were asking, hey, could you help us solve this? Now, what was that Magecart attack? It is basically, if we take now a little bit of a step back or a bit of a walk on the client side, in the browser, it's not the static sessions when the internet first went live where you're basically getting a text document and a few images from more or less the same place. What you're actually getting is components to run a piece of software in a runtime in your browser.
Yeah.
And those components now are coming from everywhere.
Right.
So the company that to whose website you went to get that page, you're actually not getting all the content from them. You're getting a lot more from everywhere across
else.
the web. And so even if the developers at this merchant, and I don't want to use, I guess, any examples, but you go to your favorite e-commerce shop, and even if their developers really care about security and want to do everything right, because once their HTML is in my browser and it asks it asks for around the internet for all of these JavaScript contents that developers at the merchant company may have looked at some point. But now they're coming from that third party completely outside of anybody's control into my browser. They had no way to see that in advance and know what I was getting. And all of these JavaScripts, they each have their own third-party JavaScripts that they rely on. So you get this massive tree forming of all this JavaScript running in my browser that really the developers on the other end, whose site I'm going to and whose site I trust, have no control over.
Right.
Now, those one easy fix might be, okay, let's just get rid of these JavaScripts again. But the problem is they are really, really crucial to any online website, online business. That's how the whole advertising space works.
Yeah.
The whole user experience space of tracking and understanding where do I use users along, where do I lose them along the funnel? Why aren't they buying? Why aren't they purchasing? Is something confusing them about the site?
Right.
Other like the chatbot help is through that too. Google Analytics is a JavaScript. All the integration to social media, so the like it on Facebook, pin it on Pinterest. Some of them you can log in with Facebook. All of those are JavaScripts, and of course, and a little bit more related to PCI is that typically if you're using a third-party service provider for payments and bringing them in as an iframe as an example, then you're doing that also via JavaScript.
Right.
And the reality is, so yeah, you can't go without those JavaScripts, but they're out there completely outside of your control. They bypass all your controls because you have this nice CI/CD pipeline where you scan everything. If your scanner does look at these third-party tags, it can only give you a point in time. Okay, I fetched them now. This is the version I got.
Yeah.
But at any one given time, there are multiple versions. Different geographies are getting different versions. Sometimes different users are getting different versions.
Right.
So there's just no way you can do that kind of at compile time and before the code is deployed as a merchant. So yeah, so that's led to most companies, bottom line, don't really know what they have running there.
Yeah.
In worst cases, sometimes maybe they've done POCs with multiple different, say, advertising companies, security vendors, fraud vendors. We all work through these JavaScripts. And a lot of those after that proof of concept just kind of stay there for years. Like somebody left the company and it's still there.
It's working. We don't want to mess with it.
And so in these Magecart attacks, the idea is that if you can compromise just anybody along that whole client-side supply chain, then that's it. You're this code running in the browser, and once you're there, you have access to pretty much everything on the page.
Yeah.
So little asterisks depending on the structure there, but pretty much everything. You can take the user to a different site. You can show them a different payment form, or you can just read everything the user inputs on any form, like a payment form or a login page.
Yeah.
So that's the basic idea of Magecart, of how just credit card information was read literally out of the payment forms. and exfiltrated. And so I think for a little while there in like 2018, 19, maybe up to 2020, there was a lot of interest and the market started picking up. This small niche of a market started picking up. But then it relatively balanced out, and it's more of a kind of one-off, growing pretty slowly, simply because people feel there are other priorities, and Magecart attacks, even though they're still happening, aren't gathering the headlines that like ransomware attacks still do and are still a growing problem. And I think with all of this as a backdrop, the council was still seeing, hey, credit cards are still getting stolen this way, and it doesn't look like merchants or the ecosystem at large are doing much about it. So we got to mandate it, and so we'll clean up this. We'll clean up some of this mess. And so, if you read the requirements, you get the sense, at least one or two bullets there in particular, say you need to justify why every script is there and relevant to payments, which I totally see as like clean up all those old proof of concepts, remove all the like, does social media need to necessarily be on your checkout page? Yeah, you need them on your e-commerce site, but on your checkout page, maybe not.
Yeah.
Have that discussion now that maybe security compliance weren't strong enough in organizations to have that yet. And
I think justifying and authorizing it is a way to enforce that conversation, not just to say, oh yeah, we have all these scripts and we know about them and they're all good, but that they actually have to be authorized by someone at the right level. I think that you're going to more likely see organizations say, all right, on our payment page, let's just get rid of all the scripts we don't absolutely have to have for functionality, because it is difficult to, justify a lot of the scripts that are being used on a payment page, like you just said. And you mentioned it briefly, but I want to kind of reinforce it. A lot of merchants that I talk to are concerned because they say, well, but we use iframes. And because we use iframes, this doesn't apply to us. And to which I would say, and your summary was excellent, by the way. Very, very good summation of what the problem is and how we got here. But the problem is that even if the iframe is secure, you can still, with the right type of malicious script on your payment page that presents that iframe, scrape away, cardholder data and send it somewhere it's not supposed to be. Correct?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you gave the answer yourself.
Sorry.
We have no. I'm actually. It's better they hear it from you because I'm trying to sell a product in the end of the day, right? So having an assessor validate
this is absolutely true. This is happening. We see it all the time, and it is something that we need to do something about.
Just to follow up, like we have customers who already buy our product and then tell us, but we don't need this PCI thing because, we use an iframe and our auditor said it was okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of confusion out there.
And maybe your auditor didn't understand.
And it's, so I know, so we've been a little bit of back and forth with the council. It sounds like they may be putting out some guidance. Maybe we hear about it a little even this week, I hope.
I hope so too.
If not, then maybe within a couple months there'll be like an FAQ out or some sort of clarification. Because actually I really like what they did with the SAQA. It lays it out really well.
It does.
Right? But auditors aren't supposed to look at SAQAs and level ones aren't supposed to look at
Are you kidding me? I do. So I do enterprise audits all the time, and I have individually read each of the SAQs because it gives you guidance on understanding data flow types and gives you some insight that you might need to have. If you're just looking at the entire, I'm going to go step by step and ask every question in the requirements of the ROC, you're missing the whole point of how does it differ based on different types of data flows. And so I think the SAQs provide that kind of insight that is helpful for everyone, not just people who are just merchants, right, who are self-assessing. And so what I would love to hear from you is when we think about this problem, we know it's a problem. We don't want this data being scraped and taken away. That's why we have these new requirements about knowing what you have and making sure you're protecting them. Here's another one just before we go on to the solution, and that is, I'll get told this, the cardholder data goes directly from the customer browser to the processor. It never hits our systems, so we're not in scope. Yeah, I'm so glad you laughed. It's not true. Quit saying that. If you can affect how that works, you're going to affect the security of that page. You're going to affect the security of cardholder data, right? And this feeds into what we're talking about too. So fair enough. I don't want this to be like a sales thing, but look, people need to understand that there are products that take care of this that you might not and probably don't have the internal ability to do in your organization. You're going to need a solution that is provided by human. There are other groups that do it, and fair thing, SecurityMetrics has a product too. But I don't want to talk about SecurityMetrics product right now. I want to talk about humans product. Tell me what you do and how you do it and how you solve this problem for specifically of the protecting the information that's presented in a customer's browser.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity again.
So
maybe start by calling out or recapping just what, in a nutshell, are those 4 new requirements, right? So it starts with you have to authorize every script that's running there on your payment page needs to be authorized. You need to assure the integrity of every script running on your payment page. And I would have personally started with this one as number 1. You need to have an inventory. You need to maintain an inventory of the scripts running there on your payment pages with written justification as to why they all need to be there.
How can you protect them if you don't know what they are?
Exactly. Right? And then the last one is there's also requirement 11.6. That was 6.4.3. Yep. There's requirement 11.6.1, which is, as I understand it, primarily, whatever control you put in there in 6.4.3, this is a control to make sure that it's actually there and working and hasn't been done away with.
Yeah.
And so that one basically says that you need to alert on any kind of modification or tamper with headers or more generally indicators of compromise, and you need to do it as received by the consumer browser.
Right.
Which is also very stated there very explicitly because, again, what you see when you do like your static analysis in a CI/CD pipeline is not that.
Yes. And again, CI/CD is continuous integration. Thank you. Continuous development. But CI/CD is like one of those things that is so it's how you automate code to production, basically. So tell me how you do this. Like, what is the solution?
So the solution, we kind of went for almost the hardest one.
Yeah. Oh, good.
we started before these PCI requirements were around, but just looking at where the company was really good and our bread and butter at the time, and still very much is the flagship, is bot or not. Know who's real, right? Identify fraud, identify bots versus humans that are hitting your sites, that are serving you ads or that you're serving ads to. And so we already had JavaScript running on the sites. And so we said, we could totally understand how we could do this with our JavaScript in the site over there. As another kind of product or capability, we are able to basically load before the other JavaScripts on the site load. And so we're able to hook them or wrap them so that we get between them and all of their interfaces with the browser from which they get data and affect browser behavior.
Oh, excellent.
And so once we kind of man in the middle them, we are able to basically monitor every activity that they do. And able to actually block even like very granularly. It's like, you need you need TikTok, Facebook on your checkout page for whatever the reason is, but they definitely don't need to read credit card data, right? So I can just block literally that card number and not let them read that without interrupting with anything else that they do. That's I think the big strength and power that we bring with this approach of the JavaScript running in the browser, and then it reports back to you the full telemetry of what a script is doing. So you're not just going off of, do I know this vendor, yes or no, and like static scans, are there vulnerabilities there? Or the way like CISSP to an extent is, and I think some of our competitors let you block, is like at the domain level. So, we're not going to talk to certain domains. That's all very blunt. We're able, again, with a scalpel knife to just say, this script isn't going to be allowed to read cardholder data anymore, isn't going to allowed to read like username, password that we see a lot of as well. And And we send all that information back. And so when you're looking and evaluating, do I authorize or justify this? And you may have, right, some cases are black and white, right? Like your fraud detection JavaScript, you're going to have it. Your payment JavaScript, you're going to have it. A couple of others, libraries that developers use, the thing that like gives you the little Visa or MasterCard logo once you've typed in like all that is JavaScript, and some of that you're going to say, okay, easy to justify. You're going to have those that were forgotten from years ago. That's easy to kill. But you're going to have this middle category of the CMO or the chief revenue officer are like, no, I gotta have that there, and the compliance and security team saying, yeah, but it doesn't really help with payments.
But why?
and so PCI to an extent is sort of setting up that that kind of showdown or loggerheads between the two. And what we'd like to think that we do is actually we can make them both happy.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like you can have your avocado toast and still afford college type situation.
You cannot.
Where basically it's like, okay, so say TikTok is, since they're in the news a lot recently anyway, you got to have them there because they drive traffic and business, but they don't need to read credit card information. So all right, so let's justify them for that business reason, and we'll authorize them under the assumption or under the directive that their ability to read cardholder data is going to be blocked. And so you're good to go.
So this sounds, I mean, when you're talking about granular protections, that can get into the realm of tuning, right? So a lot of times, like, for example, if you have alerting, monitoring, logging, you have to tune it so you know what you're seeing and you know what you want to have happen. Is that the same with your solution where the group, the merchant that's trying to put something in, they have to do a lot of tuning? Or is this something that you already know the patterns and indicator compromise and you are able to simplify that? Or how does that work, from an operational perspective, if people are like, that sounds really good, but it sounds like it might be a lot of work? What does that look like?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So yeah, I think we have the best security approach, but I think what matters also in this case with everything merchants are going to have to do is just how easy and simple it is.
Yeah.
And we think that we have the right answer there as well. Because for a lot of other solutions, you need to set them up and you need to teach them what to look for and you need to configure them. With our solution, you just add that JavaScript snippet, that one line of code into your website. It loads there. It sends us all the telemetry back, and we auto-discover everything. So you just put the snippet in there and just sit back and watch your script inventory that you need for the requirements. Just watch it fill up, and then right there within the tool, you'll have the information that you need. You'll be able to authorize and justify, record all of that over there. We'll show you your progress towards reaching compliance as far as, okay, out of your whole inventory. Literally, we went with an inbox type concept where you want it to be empty, basically. And once it's empty, you're compliant. And somewhere else you can obviously see your entire inventory. But the idea is that you can kind of burn that down and reach compliance when you authorize everything that's already sitting in there. The next piece is the assure integrity. That, I don't know, like a very actually difficult one because they come in real time from everywhere.
Can you explain assuring integrity before you talk about how you do it?
I think as a QSA, I'd be curious to hear how you'd explain assure integrity.
Well, so integrity in general just means, is the script what you expect it to be? Has it been changed beyond what you basically said it should be or understood it should be? So a change to something means its integrity has been broken, or an uncontrolled modification might be a behavior that change integrity. I don't know if that defined it or not, but that's how I see it.
No, I think that's really helpful. Thanks. So I think if I read that naively, being in like security for a while, It's it's almost like they're aiming, like the council was aiming for something like an SRI, which is very hardcore sub-resource integrity, basically within the HTML that delivers the tags.
And sub-resource integrity is how a lot of people are reading that and implementing it. So, but from your perspective,
that's going to be very hard.
Did you hear? You just called me naive. I'm a little bit hurt by that, but I am willing to be taught. From your,
I don't think that's what I was implying.
No, I'm just messing with you. From your perspective, how would you define integrity? And here's the thing, is that we all don't really know yet. This is a new thing we're all trying to figure out. We have not received yet all the official guidance, and so we're getting there together, right? So I would love to hear from your perspective. What is the integrity that you would find maybe more critical, and how would you characterize that, and then what does human do about it?
So maybe a step back a second, just on sub-resource integrity, to explain for those who aren't aware.
Oh yes, thank you for remembering that. I almost forgot.
So the idea there is you basically get a signature for every version of the script, every version of the code.
Yeah.
And then within your HTML, you're basically telling the browser, hey, for this tag here, this JavaScript I want you to bring, if it doesn't match this signature, this cryptographic signature, then fail the thing, don't load it.
This is a horrible way to do things.
and the problem is that you could literally break your site.
You
really try
could.
To do that on your payment vendor, and the most important page on your site could be breaking and failing quietly because it doesn't even tell you that it broke.
And yet this is the way that I'm seeing most people doing it. So what else?
So we're here to help.
Awesome. So when you look at integrity, how do you interpret that, and how does human deal with it?
So right off the bat, and what we think is the most reasonable approach that isn't going to keep you constantly chasing all these third parties doing their
all of their reversioning
DevOps,
and their reversioning,
releasing sometimes multiple versions a day. There's just no way you could keep up with an SRI
you really
hash. It just couldn't work. And so the view that we are taking is we are right there in the browser. So we will let you know, has it changed? Is it doing any activity? Is it taking any activity that could be considered risky that it wasn't taking before when you authorized it? And then we will pop it out of authorized state and alert you that a script has been modified, and you have to come in and basically authorize it again. We also are tying it into a feature we recently launched into beta that's very exciting, what we call policy-based mitigation or policy-based management, where you can set up these policies in advance that tell our sensor in there, what do you want them to do the first time they see something? And you're telling our backend, how do you want to treat some of the telemetry coming in even before it hits the UI? And so the great thing about that is you can say off the bat, these are types of actions of scripts that I don't deem as high risk. So I will just list all of them. Don't even alert me that they happened. And these are like very dangerous things that I'd like you to block as soon as you see them. And the great thing on that is that now I can flip the whole thing around and actually take the zero trust approach of like the data center of sectioning something off, and move that concept and take it with me into the browser. So I can set up a policy that basically says no vendor is allowed to access cardholder data. And if I have, say, my fraud vendor maybe needs to, so I can set up them as an exception rule and say only scripts by this vendor or only this specific script are allowed.
Okay.
And with a lot of granularity as well of like per different vendors, per different scripts, on which host names. Do you want it to be like all unknown vendors or all third-party vendors or as another great example, because first-party scripts are on there too, and they also come under PCI. But I think for most companies, at least that I've spoken with, they have tests in place and processes in place to make sure that those are secure. So they don't necessarily need that noise from us. And so setting up a policy that says all the first-party scripts, after the first time I've authorized them, any other future modification, just automatically authorize those. Don't alert me on them. Don't make me come in and do any work. But those are all auto-authorized.
Okay.
And so if you set a few thoughtful policies there, you set them right, then it shouldn't take that much effort at all, because all you're going to see in alerts is things that fell through the cracks of those policies. And that's where you're going to have to go in and manage.
So I think that a lot of merchants are not going to be able to. They don't have a SOC. They don't have a SIM. They don't have these internal people, and so this might be more difficult for them. But
it's done right in the tool, so you don't need to have a SOC, a SIM. It's a
So you're talking about, even people who don't have a high degree of technology are able to use this. It functions for them in ways that a human can understand. Pun intended.
By the way, and that's a journey. Some of the alerts that we throw are like written by engineers or hackers for kind of assuming that they're on the other end as well. So we're in a process of making that more clear, but for the most part, it's clear, and for the most part, to be able to block something, that's 2 clicks. Setting up a policy is a drag and drop, and then like a drop down to pick like which fields specifically do you want to block access from. Like maybe reading the email address is okay, but the password isn't in credentials, or maybe for credit card information, maybe the credit card number in CVV isn't okay, but maybe you have some reason for some vendor to give them access to something else. You have all of that control. So you have it in real time after you've seen the event happen, or you have the ability to set up a proactive policy that will do all that for you. And so simplicity-wise, to just go back to that original point, just deploy that JavaScript, and that's it. Sit back. Inventory is already there. You're already like halfway through one of those 3 requirements. Now you're going to go through it, and we're going to show you the data that you need to be able to authorize and justify. Justify is more of a business decision. We'll show you what we know of, like who the vendor is, if it's somebody already in our system, and what description we have of them. To be able to have that discussion and say, does it need to be there or not? How do we justify it? Are we okay to authorize it? And then we will automatically do that assurance of integrity for you, and then enable you with these other policies and tools to just whenever anything fails an integrity check, which is going to be a lot. Even with ours, it's doing something different. If you went with the harder one of let's just keep versions of, these are the versions we've seen before, a little like we're doing with headers for 11.6.1.
Right.
These are the versions we've seen before. Now a new version arrived, approved that one as well. Like those change all the time too.
Yeah.
So if they're just changing and they're completely innocuous, they're not doing anything suspicious in the browser, the requirement says that it's okay to automate some of the authorization. Like you authorize by manual or automated means. I don't remember the exact sentence, but it's definitely there. You can,
I don't have it memorized yet. I'm sorry, guys. I'm working on the memorization, but it takes time.
But basically, then you're only looking at really the risky stuff, and also the risky stuff that you weren't comfortable off the bat setting a policy for in advance.
Right.
And so ideally, it should be a minimal level of effort ongoing. There'll be that effort up front because you're going to have to go through each one of them the first time.
Sure.
And say, are you comfortable? Yes or no? Unless if you want to do it right, that's what you have to do.
Yep. It takes time. No matter what solution you use, it's going to take time.
Exactly. And after that, so it should be running very easy, very simple. And if there's any way that we can make your life simpler, we want to know about it, because that's really our mission and our goal now for this product is just make that process of first reaching compliance and then maintaining compliance as streamlined, as painless as possible for the customer. But we're still also very proud of our security roots and of our unique ability, I think, to enable the business while mitigating the risk. That the ability to block with a couple of clicks or to set up a policy, and us being right there in the browser, being able to block things as they happen versus scanning solutions that, okay, I got this information now, but
now what?
How do I action it? What do I do with it, right? Is what I think really sets us apart.
Very interesting. So I had one last question for you about it, and that is people are always concerned about privacy, especially when you're sending information to a third party. So the information that human receives, does it contain data from the customer browser as well?
None at all, because we just don't need it.
Great.
Right. So we are looking at the actions. We will tell you that a script is accessing a credit card number. We will not tell you what credit card number they read. We don't need that information, right? And likewise, emails, passwords, and any other sensitive thing. All we send back is this telemetry of our observations of what scripts have done, and telemetry of what is our sensor blocked, and we never we just don't need any of this other data or personal data, any privacy data. And that's a little bit after, maybe with the excitement now with PCI and all the interest on here. There's a lot also for those of you at home who also care about privacy. Let's just say that what we see on our end is a lot of those vendors that you have certain wording written with them in contracts on what they're allowed and not allowed to collect. We see them collecting a lot.
Oh, no.
So we have some customers who very much care about that, and that's why they're with us, and they track that and are able to block that as well.
So a lot broader application than just PCI. Although
right.
PCI is, of course, the most important thing today. But a lot of people have to deal with more than just credit card payments. And so knowing that this can be applicable in other ways, I think it's very helpful to understand.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, this is what a great comprehensive understanding of the problem and how human solves it. I'm so glad that you had time to come and talk to me today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for coming.
And I hope we get to talk again.
For inviting me, sorry.
You bet. I hope we get to talk again in the future.
Me too.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of SecurityMetrics podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.